Beloved friends, when the Bab declared his mission, there was temporarily only one true believer in the world. The significance of the faith to that believer was an overwhelming joy, a passion of self-sacrifice, and an intense yearning to share his experience with his fellow men. No question or principle of administration was involved at that point. Now we have seen this condition repeated many times during the World Crusade, where a gallant pioneer has gone forth to some country or some island and been the solitary Baha'i in that area. Again, it is a question of joy and faith, of self-sacrifice, of devotion, of intense yearning to share the experience with others. And until others are gathered together, the administration does not apply. Now we begin, and we see the teacher confirming or enrolling new Baha'is one by one. And let us say we have a group of 8 gradually evolved. Now the whole mystery of the world order of Baha'u'llah is contained within the experience of those 8 souls, because that is the interval of time allotted to us to enter so deeply into the spirit of the faith that we have true relationships with other Baha'is and with our fellow men. If we do not employ rightly that infinitely precious interval of time, we become part of a community with a spiritual assembly not qualified to deal with that new element possessed by the assembly, that is authority. Now, where does the group of 9 or the body of 9 acquire authority? It does not come by its own volition. It is not conferred by the National Spiritual Assembly. It is not a form of legal charter. It is a divine creation. And that which is given as a blessing to the people of pure souls becomes a torment to the people of divided mind and undeveloped personality. Wherever we find suffering in a local community, that is, suffering through the relationships of the Baha'is, it is because we have turned the divine creation against ourselves. Instead of using it as a fulfillment of our love, our aspiration, and our unity. We come into the cause as a physical being capable of a certain amount of aspiration and idealism. A certain amount. Not too much, or we wouldn't be alive. Now, if we attain faith, our universe is transformed. For example, if 9 people enter a room which has seating accommodation for only 7 or 8, 1 or 2 are obliged to stand. Because physically, 9 persons cannot occupy 9 physical chairs. And the people, perhaps who knew in advance there were only 7 chairs, hurried in, so they wouldn't be one or 2 left standing. That again is human nature. But in the spiritual world, these distinctions do not exist. And the spiritual world is here and not some mysterious place we find after death. The Greeks and the Romans placed their golden age in the past, and the Christians place it some other side of the grave. And Baha'u'llah placed it here. The spiritual kingdom exists here or it exists nowhere. So the fundamental impetus we must acquire for strengthening the Baha'i institutions is not to enroll people, but to confirm them. Anybody can memorize a few essential teachings and say, yes, I accept the Baha'i, I accept Baha'u'llah, I accept the will and testament of Abdu'l-Baha in its entirety. I will cooperate wholeheartedly with the administrative order. That's a catechism. Enrollment is not the significant step. It is sharing the experience of those Baha'is who love Baha'u'llah, who know that sacrifice is the keenest form of joy, and who wish to share their experience. We have too many enrollments, few as they are, and not enough confirmations. Now, if we take and assure the quality of the enrollment plus confirmation, it follows through the experience of the group, and the people who tend to be too proud are brought low because the others have the courage. And the people who are too humble are raised because the other people have mercy and insight. The people who wish to dominate are thwarted until they've learned their lesson. And the people who wish to lean and cling on someone else and be dragged forward by them, they learn to walk by their own efforts. So this infinitely subtle element of authority is given us by Baha'u'llah in the institution first of the local spiritual assembly. It is an authority which is not vested in any of the individuals, although it has to express itself through them. It is a leverage given us to establish justice and peace upon the earth, and not to make minute, hair-splitting decisions about abstract or artificial situations inflicted upon the assembly by an enrolled but unconfirmed community. And then one stage higher, we have the National Spiritual Assembly. And there you have the authority and the responsibility to recognize the existence of every local spiritual assembly. If that authority did not exist, 9 enemies in a given town could say, we are a spiritual assembly, and announce it to the press, and announce it to the people of prominence, and then the cause would be judged by their actions. But they can't get by the National Spiritual Assembly. And that is why it is so important when a local assembly incorporates that in their statement of purpose they function in accordance with the principles and under the supervision of the National Spiritual Assembly, so that they tie in to the larger body, and they're not an isolated legal organism, self-sufficient in the eyes of the public. The National Spiritual Assembly itself has a responsibility infinitely transcending its authority. The National Spiritual Assembly has only gradually acquired a little authority and a little influence through obedience to a higher power. All these years, the person, the writings of the beloved guardian. And so your National Spiritual Assembly is the channel through which international plans, objectives are transmitted to the local communities, the groups, and the individual Baha'is. The guardian accepted the form of constitution and bylaws developed by the American believers and made it uniform for all national and local bodies throughout the world. Naturally, with some deviations here and there because of the local conditions. But fundamentally, if you are a member of a local community in San Francisco, Chicago, or New York, and you go to any city in Europe, Asia, or Africa where there is a Baha'i community, your status is unchanged. The conditions, the principles are unchanged. And then, under the will and testament, the guardian some years ago appointed hands of the cause. Now, the hands are independent of administrative bodies, but servants to them. The hands operate under the directives laid down by the guardian and now by the collective body of hands as transmitted through the 9 custodians. But they are the servants of the Baha'is. Their first obligation was to assist the National Spiritual Assemblies in the realization of the objectives of the 10-year plan. Then they were given responsibility for the protection of the faith from violators and enemies within or without. And then, as you know, the guardian himself, just a little while before he passed on, constituted them the chief custodians, so that they could qualify under the will and testament to appoint a body of 9, as the will and testament describes, and be recognized by the state of Israel. Now that's a tremendous thing. Shoghi Effendi held title to all those sacred properties as guardian, not as a person, but as the guardian. And if it had not been for that provision in the will and testament, that the hands were to appoint a body of 9, there would have been no one that the state of Israel, no matter how willing it might have been, there would have been no one they could legally transfer the title to. But it was transferred to the 9 custodians. And the 9 custodians, following the example and the wishes of the guardian, set up these Israel branches of various national spiritual assemblies. And the titles of the properties are vested in those bodies. Now you see how tremendous this is. What a vision the guardian had. Supposing that the state of Israel should be overthrown. I won't say by whom, but suppose. Well, the American Baha'is as citizens could go to their government and say, here, we have a vested interest in Israel. We hold title to the shrine of Baha'u'llah and Baji and the surrounding properties. And Canada could go, and India could go. You see, what a foundation is being laid for the universal house of justice, which will not only rest upon the existing national spiritual assemblies as Baha'i bodies, will rest upon them as entities with legal interest in Israel. It's impregnable. But it's only impregnable if we stop being enrolled and start being confirmed. That's a strengthening of all Baha'i institutions. When a committee or an assembly, local or national, is operated by people who love the cause, who have no personal sensitiveness about someone else having a brighter idea at the committee meeting, or someone being sent on a mission that they wanted to undertake. But when they see the cause from the point of view of the kingdom, everything is perfect. Wasn't it Abdu'l-Baha who quoted Muhammad, who said, "Cast thine eye and see if thou canst see anything that is not perfect"? He didn't mean the social or physical world. He meant the world of the kingdom. And therefore, friends, if we wish to strengthen our administrative institutions so that they can be the fulcrum upon which the door of justice is open to the human race, let us find within ourselves the birth of the Spirit. Thank you.